Welcome to SparkMap. SparkMap is built and run by a team of data analysts, programmers, and GIS technicians who collect, clean, and aggregate data from reliable secondary sources. We make these data available through two powerful tools, the Community Needs Assessment and MapRoom. Need to build a community needs assessment or gather more data about your community? Use SparkMap to spend less time researching and more time implementing positive change. The following video will provide examples of how you can use SparkMap. To keep up with SparkMap, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and social media accounts.
All right, well, to get started, I'm here just on SparkMap today. I'm going to start with the map room first and talk a little bit about how you can find and extract zip code data from the map room. And then we'll transition over to the community needs assessment. So underneath this Create tab is where we're going to spend all of our time today. That first item is the needs assessment, and the second item here is the map room. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the map room, and there's a couple of things to note here. So first and foremost, this is kind of a blank slate. So we're going to start from scratch in terms of making this map. And the first thing that I want to point out is that we have basically three ways to search for data in our map room. We have lots of data in here, 28,000 plus layers available to map. And so being able to search efficiently is going to be a good skill to have. So the first thing that you can do is search by keyword. So Google has sort of normed all of us to searching by keyword. Google's a little fancier than we are, though, because you can type in a whole sentence. Here we're looking for just one or two words to kind of get you the list that you're going to look through. So first there's been a lot of talk about Snap lately, so I figured I would use that as an example for today. So if I type in Snap here, just to show you, that's the keyword search. I get about 103 results if I do it that way. I can also group my results by topic or search by topic. So here you can see in the search data window, I have that browse by topic option, and we have a nice short taxonomy that opens up when you click these little carrots into a much more expansive taxonomy where you can kind of look for data by category. And then we also have this option to browse by source. So if you are looking for data from a specific source, you can look for that source here in this list. You can see that we have a lot of the big names, right? Things like data from the US Census, the American Community Survey. We've got data from the CDC and the EPA, from CMS. We've got all kinds of stuff in here. So if you aren't familiar with our map room or with our data sources, I would definitely recommend looking through this list because you might get some ideas of what we have and what we don't have. And then also maybe even learn about some new data sources. So I feel like I always learn about new sources when I scroll through this list. So I'm going to go back though to my search by keyword here again and type in Snap. And one of the things that I want to show you to really be able to just dive right into zip code specific data is that if you use the keyword search or the topic search or the source search, there's going to be a little line that shows up under the search results here. So I see search results for Snap, and then right under here, you'll see this little caret that says selected geography types. And so this is a great way to just filter all of our data that's available here in the map room by a specific geography type. So in this case today, we're obviously thinking about zip codes. So I can click that zip code checkbox to filter by zip codes. And what you'll see here is now my 103 results are down to 42. So I've only got 42 of those Snap related layers available at zip code level. So that helps me narrow down what I can use or what I'm looking for. I did want to make a note here today that you'll notice that right here next to the word zip code, we also have ZCTA. And you'll see that throughout our map room as well when you're selecting geographies. That stands for zip code tabulation area. And it really is just our way of aligning zip codes from the USPS, right, with zip codes, kind of how we define it, how the census defines it, right, in geography. So that's where you'll see that ZCTA. Anytime you see that, it does mean it's the zip code equivalent. So just a little note there. So I've filtered my list here by zip code. So I can see, like I said, I've got about 42 results that I can select from that will get me zip code data. So for today, I'm just going to go ahead and pick this very first one. So this households receiving SNAP benefits. This comes to us from the American Community Survey and is our most recent data layer. So I'm able to view this as a data layer. But before I do that, the one other thing that I did want to show you here is that you also, in addition to searching for data, right, to add to your map, we can also add zip boundaries to our map. So if I type in the word zip, I can keep my zip filter on if I want to. You're going to see that I get some boundaries, some zip code boundaries, and those come to us from the Tiger files. And we have past years and current years. So I'm going to just go ahead and use this 2024, our most recent Tiger data here. And so you'll notice for both of the layers that I selected, it gives me this little zoom in to view data. So that's why I'm not seeing anything quite populate on my map yet. And that is common when we are looking at some of those smaller sub-county geographies, is that sometimes you will have to zoom in order to view the data itself. So for today, I'm going to go to Memphis. I'm interested in looking at Memphis, Tennessee. And so one thing that you'll notice is that I use the little search, the location search down here at the bottom in order to type in the city name, and then I'm able to select there from that list. You can do that. You can use the city name. You can type in a county name, a state, or an address, and it'll zoom in that way for you. Also, down here on the right-hand side, we have the plus and minus buttons, and those allow you to zoom in and zoom out as well. So just wanted to point that out. So now we're looking here at households receiving SNAP benefits by zip code. And one of the reasons that I mentioned about adding those Tiger boundaries is because a lot of times when we're looking at things like a bunch of counties or a bunch of zip codes, it's really helpful to have those things labeled. So if you have the boundaries themselves turned on, one of the things that you'll notice here in the legend is that we have the ability to turn that on and off, right? So if I didn't want to see those boundaries, I could turn them off, but still have them available. But I can also turn on my label. And so now I'm able to see, okay, where is 38127, right? In relation to downtown Memphis. So I think that's super helpful to be able to have those labels turned on, especially when I'm first getting started. So I also wanted to point out that sometimes the boundaries feel very harsh, and we have this opacity or transparency slider. And so if I wanted to make those a little bit softer when it comes to looking at my map, I can turn those down, and you can see now if I turn them back up to 100, you can see that they're sort of that dark orangish brown. They're very harsh as they're outlining the different zip codes. I could turn it down to about 35%, and it's a little bit softer, which is, I think, a little easier on the eyes sometimes. I can still see those lines, but they aren't quite as distinct. So that's the usefulness then of adding those Tiger boundaries, those zip code Tiger boundaries. Now we have those for other geographies too, just so you know, but we are focused on zip codes today. So moving down then to my zip code layer, right now I'm looking at households receiving SNAP benefits by zip code. So we're able to see here that we've got lots of areas sort of around Memphis that are in that over 19% category, right? I can use that same opacity slider to kind of turn up my data as well to be able to see that a little bit easier. And something that you'll note is that it defaults, right, to the ZICTA, the ZCTA geography. Now, if I go back and I search for data without using that geography filter that I showed you, it will default to county level or whatever sort of is the most common geography. If it's a state level data source, it'll go state. But if you do use the geography filter, it will populate those layers at the geography that you selected there. So here I'm looking at it at zip code, but I can, like many of our data, I could look at it at a census tract or a county level. So just wanted to point that out. Unfortunately, not all data are available at all geographies, right? So sometimes you might encounter data that's not available at zip code level or that's not available at some of those other geographies as well. We also have the ability to switch between total and percent here in the legend as well. So if you would rather see total number of households, you can see that I can toggle between those two things, still at the zip code level, right? We're still looking at it the same geography between percent and total there. And then the last little drop down that we have here is time period. So if you wanted to look back in time, you'd be able to do that as well. But here we're just going to stick with our most recent layer, or sorry, our most recent year. So right now we're able to see at a zip code level some of the variance, right, around Memphis in terms of household receiving SNAP. But one of the things that often happens is that, like right now, we're looking at a lot of zip codes that are in that highest, darkest orange area, right? And so the question that I always like to ask myself in this scenario is like, how far over 19% are we looking at, right? We all know that they're over 19%, but how far over 19%? And so there's a couple of ways that we can go about getting the specific zip code data. And that's what I'm going to show you next. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my labels for my zip codes just to make it a little bit easier. And the first thing that you can do in order to find those exact values is to click on any of the zip codes on the map. So one thing that you'll notice here is that, oh my gosh, it's not giving me any data. Well, I don't have the right layer selected. It's always going to default to whatever is sort of on top, right? So we've got those zip code boundaries that are on top. So I can switch to the households receiving SNAP benefits using that drop down. And now I'm able to see those exact values themselves. This is going to remind me of the zip code that I'm looking at, so 38106, right? And then it's going to give me some data. So again, answering that question of like, how far over 19% are we talking? This one's about 29%, right? 29.24. So that's almost 30% of the population in that specific zip code are receiving SNAP benefits. We can also see here that roughly comes out to about 2,668 folks or households that are receiving those benefits. And then we get our margins of error. So that's plus or minus about 221 people, which is an okay number there. So that's where you can start to poke around. And if I click on any of the zip codes here, kind of the same thing, I can get the exact number. So this one's 31%. And I can see that's about 3,000 households. And continue to do that as I go around the map. Now, I could turn off my zip code boundaries, and then I'm going to get that every time first in the pop-up since our zip boundaries aren't ahead of our receiving SNAP benefit layer. So here we can see this one's around 35%. So that's pretty significant, right? These are some of the areas that if we were to be doing outreach, food delivery, those types of things, that we would probably want to focus our time on, given that the percentage of households receiving SNAP benefits is pretty high in those areas. So that is one way to go about seeing and getting some of that zip code level data. But if you are trying to do anything more than just casually view, that might not be the most efficient way for you to get zip code data, right? As clicking on every zip code on the map and getting that data. So we have a couple of other advanced data tools, and I'm going to show you one now that's going to give you the option to download zip code data here on the map. So over here on the left-hand side, we've got our add data, and that will take us back to our search data. And then we have this tools option. And the tools option, you're able to use any of these tools. We could query the data and ask questions of it. So we could ask, for example, how many zip codes have a household's receiving SNAP rate greater than 30%, and it could tell us that answer. But what I want to focus on today is the download data option, because this is a really nice feature that allows you to capture data on the map in an Excel file or CSV file format. So within the download data tool, first off, you want to make sure that you've got the right map layer that you're downloading. So yesterday when I was practicing for today, I had both of my layers turned on and I went through the whole process of downloading data, and I got this data table that just said Tennessee, basically. And that was not going to do me much good, right? Because I downloaded that boundary layer instead of downloading my snap layer. So just wanted to point that out, that if you do have multiple layers and you're going to download some, make sure you select the right layer. Don't make the same mistakes that I did. And so here we can see I've selected that households receiving SNAP benefits layer, so we're good there. And now we have a couple of different options for our selection. So it's going to default to rectangle, which I don't always find to be the most helpful because, we don't live in rectangles, our areas, but nonetheless, you could do it by rectangle. And what you'll see is basically anything my rectangle touched, any zip code that my rectangle touched is going to get highlighted as part of that output, as part of that download. So it looks like I can look under my selection result here on the left-hand side that I got about 30 zip codes when I made that rectangle. If you want to get a little bit more precise, you can use this polygon feature. And this is what I find myself using most frequently. So if you remember what I just said, basically anything that my polygon touches now is going to be included in my output here. So if I wanted to kind of capture some of these zip codes, I could do that. I don't have to go around the exact boundaries of the zip codes. I just need to make sure that I'm touching them or they're encapsulated, like some of these ones in the middle. And then I'm going to double click to close my loop here. So I got about 30 results again, the same amount, right? And you'll see here, then I am able to view that data. So I could pull that up over here on the right-hand side and be able to see, okay, what attributes am I going to get? Basically, anything that you see in that pop-up is going to be part of the attributes that you'll get in your download or what you can view here on the screen. The other options outside of the polygon include the lasso. And, if you want to take your hand at doing a lasso, please go right ahead. I'm not very good at it. It's easier with a mouse than it is with anything else. But it's basically just drawing a nice little lassoed area. So you can kind of see how that plays out. Or you can use the select by radius tool. And so here, I like this tool as well, because if you think about service areas, if you're part of a hospital or a nonprofit organization and you're like, we serve these counties and we're willing to go, 5 miles outside of our radius, or within a 5-mile radius, we're going to provide these services. You're able to then create a map that shows you, or get data that shows you what is within that 5-mile radius. So let's pretend like we've got an organization here more towards the middle part of Memphis here, and I can select And you'll see what happens is that it gives me that radius in a dotted line so I can see what that 5 mile radius is around my center. And then it gives me the data for any of the zip codes that that radius touches. So again, I can view that data by pulling it up there on the right side of the map and scrolling, or I can export it to a CSV. And so I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to stop my share super fast so I can then share my Excel file here. We'll get that pulled up just so you guys can see what this looks like. And let me make it bigger because it's hard to read. So you'll see here that I got a few cities outside of Memphis. It looks like a couple of other cities, but I'm still within the state of Tennessee. Most of my zip codes are within Memphis. This says FIPS code. It's just going to be our geography code. And in this case, it's going to be that zip code. So these are all of the zip codes that I touched. And then I get the data for for each of those zip codes. So if I expand some of these, we can see that this is the percent, this is the number of households, and we include our margins of error. Again, basically anything that you get in that pop-up is going to transfer to the export here. So let me stop this and go back to my big screen here. And so that's what that export looks like. And so if you are interested in using these data somewhere else, right, other than within our map room, that is a great way to go ahead and capture some of that zip code data for a specific area. One of the things that I wanted to mention, which is a limitation here, is that we don't allow giant geographies to be exported. And so what I mean by that is that if you wanted every zip code in the state of Tennessee, that's going to exceed our record limit. So we have about 1,000 record limits, a record limit of 1,000. So this is more for capturing smaller areas. So something like the city around Memphis, or maybe a rural area in another state. Now there's caveats with everything, right? So if you like live in New Hampshire and you don't have that many zip codes, you can probably prove me wrong and maybe get the whole state. But for the folks that live in bigger states, you know, places like Texas, California, others with a lot of counties or a lot of geographies like zip codes, you might end up, if you want to do a larger geography, you might end up having to do it in batches just because we do have that record limit there. But you can get up to 1,000, so that's still a lot. And I would encourage you to use that feature as much as you want to. So just to give you a quick recap of accessing that data within the map room, accessing zip code data within the map room, I am going to go back and I'm going to use my clear map button and just start all over. It says, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. I'm very sure that I want to start all over. So I'm going to add some more layers to my map. My previous search is still in here, so I'm going to kind of close all of this out. And instead of looking at SNAP this time, I wanted to show you some layers related to insurance, because we do have lots of data related to insurance that is available at the zip code level. So again, I'm going to start by typing in my keyword there and then using my geography filter to go from about 194 results down to about 67 results that are available, tagged insurance, and also available at the zip code level here. So a couple of the layers that we have that I wanted to point out was, first off, I'm going to sort. We have a sort by best match or release date, and I'm often a release date kind of person. So that very first one, when you sort by release date, is the health insurance marketplace enrollment. So these are data for 2025 about marketplace enrollment. So we can add that to our map. That's going to be available at the zip code level. And then we can add some other things like maybe employer provided insurance or directly purchased insurance. We also have layers related to the uninsured population as well. So maybe I'll add one of those. So wanted to mention here that you're not limited by any means to a single layer. A lot of times we demonstrate the map room and we just use a single layer, but you're not limited. You can add as many layers as you want, but it does take a little bit of fine tuning to be able to view all of those layers. So again, it's asking me to zoom in because I'm kind of zoomed out a little too far to see some of these data, right? So today I'm going to use a different example, and I'm going to go to Jefferson City, Missouri instead, and see what we can see there. So let me zoom out just a little bit. And again, you'll notice that because I used that zip code filter, if I just searched for insurance and added these layers without using the geography filter, it would default to county. But because I use the filter, they all default to zip code, which is really nice. So here we can look at things like, let me turn off some of my layers that I've got on. This first one is going to be looking at at a zip code level, the uninsured population. So how many folks in this area outside of Jefferson City are uninsured? So it looks like we do have sort of a big area here in the middle where we have higher rates of uninsured. Here we can see this is over 30%. In some of these areas, this is around 45%. So those are pretty high percentages, right? So again, if we're thinking about areas that we want to target with high vulnerability, low rates of insurance, this might be a place to start, right? The other thing that we can do is we can turn on then different types of insurance. Where are we getting that from, right? So here we can see that we've got some variation in terms of directly and purchased insurance. So this would be maybe you're a sole proprietor, maybe you don't work for an employer that provides insurance, so you go out and you're purchasing insurance on your own. So that's available here to you as well. Or we could look at some of that employer provided insurance. And so I thought this was kind of an interesting area because in most places, you'll see that employer provided insurance is very high. And it is very high in these areas, but it's not as high as one would expect it to be. So that could be another question or another avenue that you could start to go down is, are there ways to help employers in this area be able to provide employer sponsored insurance to get more people in this area insured? The last layer that I have here then is that marketplace enrollment. So how many folks are going out and buying insurance on the marketplace? Maybe since we do have a higher rate of folks that are not insured by employer provided insurance, maybe the marketplace is a good option for them. And so this could be a little bit of information to help you target areas where insurance education or insurance literacy is low, right? We could do some more outreach and education in those areas. Or maybe you would want to add something like we could add, let me turn off my zip code filter here, FQHC. We could look for things like FQHCs and think about access as well. So for all of those folks that don't have insurance, are they able to access different types of facilities that may provide some sliding scale services or other types of services? So we can see here that there are a few FQHCs in this area, but as we get sort of more northern, we see that those drop off quite a bit, and it would take a bit of driving for someone to be able to access those services. So as I had showed you before, at this point, we could do a lot of things. We could continue to click the map to get more information about our uninsured and insured populations. We could also go back to our tools bar here, and we could use our download data tool. So this is a good example here where it defaults. You can see it defaulted to that FQHC layer because it's like on top, right? So I need to choose the uninsured population layer instead. Again, I can come down here and select by rectangle or polygon. But if I'm interested in getting maybe a swath of this area here in Cole County, I could do that. And I've touched a lot. I've touched about 42 zip codes, it looks like, in doing that. And I can view that data here or pull it down into a CSV. So those are a couple of ways to look for and filter for zip code data and also extract these data from our map room. So I want to mention that our map room is completely free to use, and these download tools and everything else are also completely free. You don't have to have an account or anything on SparkMap in order to use it. If you do want to save any of the maps that you've made, that is something that if you create an account, then you're able to save maps. So that might be an incentive to do that. Okay, so now that we're out of the map room, we figured out how to search for and filter for zip level data. We know how to extract it. There are a couple of other features on SparkMap that allow you to access zip level data. And those all happen within our community needs assessment. So just as a caveat, these data, the zip code level tools and the zip code level data within the report, within the needs assessment, are available to our premium annual subscribers. So if you don't have an account or you don't have a subscription, you won't be able to see these features. But I want to point out that we do have some nice test reports or like demo reports. So you can demo the functionality if you're curious how it works and what the outputs are going to look like after the webinar today. We do let you play with it and test it out. But to get access to the full list of zip code indicators and then also the full zip geographies, we would require you to have a subscription. Okay, so within the community needs assessment, there's a couple of ways that we can go about creating a zip level report. So you'll notice that it kind of lands on zip code first. And so we have created a new interface here where you're able to select your state, and then it'll list all of the zip codes in your state so you can make a selection that way. I am going to start though with county because I feel like a lot of folks who use SparkMap, they start with county or their sort of county level is default. So I'm going to start there and then I'll show you the zip feature and the pick from map feature. So for county, again, it's going to start by asking us to choose a state. So for our demonstration today, I'm going to look at Bernalillo County here in New Mexico. And so I'm going to add that as my report location. Now I'm going to be able to choose my indicators here. And so you'll notice that because I have a full active subscription, all of my indicators are available to me to select from. If you don't have a full subscription, some of these may be grayed out. So just a note there. And one thing that I also wanted to note here in the indicator selection step is that we have these little I buttons and some little notes that we've added. And so sometimes, well, just like with our map room data, not all data are available at all geographies, right? So we've made some notes to hopefully help you identify which data are only available at the state and county levels versus what are some of those indicators that are available at a zip code level or a census tract level. The other thing that you'll notice here and in the zip code selector when we get to that is that we have these little notes now all over that ask you to select 5 or more zip codes or 5 or more census tracts. You're not required to. You can still select a single zip code or a couple of them, but to get more valid aggregated summaries, selecting 5 or more zip codes is going to give you a better result. And so we just make note of that here. And you'll see it again, like I said, in that zip selector as well. So to get started, I'm going to select some data here about insurance. I'm going to stick with my little insurance example for now, just so we can kind of see how it was presented in the map room. That same data now are going to be presented in our community needs assessment report. So here I can look at insurance, so adult insurance that are insured or uninsured, excuse me. Then we also have insurance by provider type. So here's our insured population by provider type. So that's going to be our employer sponsored insurance. And this one actually gets into much more detail and includes things like TRICARE and some other types of insurance. So that's good. It gives us a little bit more information there. And then we do also have the marketplace enrollment. And I had it clicked and now I'm looking at here and I don't see it, but that's okay. I can go back up though and I can search because I can do that. There we go. All right, so now I've got those three indicators selected. And remember that I did select Bernalillo County as my geography, okay? But because I have access to the zip code feature, what I can do here now that my report, all three of my indicators have loaded, we have this report options button. I guess before I click that, I'm going to scroll down so you see what it looks like. So this is an example of what our indicators are going to look like for county level data, right? So we're just getting Bernalillo County, and then we're getting benchmark to the state of New Mexico and to the rest of the United States, right? So that's what the report is going to look like when you first load it if you choose a county. Now we have this report options button at the top and we're able to click that and it's going to give us some more options. And you'll see here at the top, it says show zip code data. So if I click the checkbox next to that, you'll see that my report kind of repopulates. It's going to rerun. And I'm going to be able to scroll down and see that, well, New Mexico is not a participating state in the marketplace, so we don't get good marketplace data. But I can go down to my insured population and provider type and start to get some of that more granular information for the county and for each of the zip codes within Bernalillo County. So you'll see here that a couple of things to point out. We get those kind of same categories here. So who's insured, who has private insurance, and who has public insurance, right? So we can see those are our columns here. And then we can start to kind of suss out, do we see any patterns, right, within public versus private insurance or population with health insurance? Sometimes you'll get zeros or no data. Zeros means zero, or no data means no data were collected. So that makes sense, right? If we don't have a population to collect data from, then we're not going to have any data. Sometimes you'll also see data suppressed. So anytime values are usually depending on the data, under 5, under 10, we'll suppress those values to make sure that none of this information is personally identifiable. But we can go zip code by zip code and be able to see that private insurance rate, right? Anytime we can also provide an inset map, you'll see that as well within the report. And then anytime we can provide additional breakouts, we'll do that as well. So here we can see some of that additional detail where we see employer sponsored, we have direct purchase, we've got TRICARE, Medicare, Medicaid, and VA. So that helps us understand a little bit more as we're looking through some of these zip codes. Do we have a lot of veterans, right, in one area where we see a lot of TRICARE or military or VA health insurance, right? Do we have a lot of seniors that are receiving Medicare or Medicaid, right? So that's some good indications there we can see in a table like this. Again, we can also see that employer sponsored insurance as well. Do we have a lot of employers that are providing access to employees or not? And so you can see how that plays out then by zip code and by type. This is the percentage table. So instead of totals, these are showing percentages of the same data. We have a nice little interactive chart here where you can view that information as well. That's rolled up to the county level. Now, sometimes what'll happen is we have data that aren't available at the zip code level, or we haven't selected enough zip codes for us to feel comfortable providing you with zip code level data, right? And so when that happens, you'll get an indicator that looks just like this, where it's just giving you that county level data, the state benchmark, and the national benchmark, and it's not breaking it down to a more granular geography. So just kind of a note there on that. All right, so that was kind of the walkthrough then for when you choose a county, right? So you can start by looking at county level, create your report, and choose that view zip data option to be able to view the zip code level data along with the county benchmark and the state and national benchmarks. One thing that you'll notice about that report that I created, though, was that there wasn't an aggregate, right? Well, in this case, the aggregate's the county level, but it's not basically aggregating each of those zip codes together. So if we change the way that we are selecting our geography and we go back to this zip code option, um, we can do that instead, right? So let me go back down here to New Mexico. We'll just stay there. And what you'll see now, oh, actually, I wanted to do Delaware because I think I picked on Delaware earlier about being a small state. Um, you can see here that Delaware does, in fact, have more than 5 zip codes, so that's good. And so I can select a series of zip codes within Delaware that I want to get information for. And again, as I mentioned earlier, this is a great way for folks who define their service areas based on zip codes to be able to create a very customized report, right? So if you are part of an FQHC or a hospital system or another organization that defines itself by zip codes, or you just want to get more granular within your county level service area, this is a really great way to do it. So here I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to pick the first couple that are listed on here. I don't know if I think they're mostly contiguous because I tried it out. So I'm going to go ahead and I've got all of these zip codes. Now I can select some additional indicators, right? So I don't have to look at just those insurance indicators. I could look at something related to employment or poverty or income. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at median family income. We could also look at median household income, depending on what you're most interested in. And maybe we'll go back to that SNAP layer as well. So let me search for that so I don't waste too much time. So we've got SNAP benefits and income. All right, so now instead of our location up here being a county, right? Last time it was Bernalillo County. This time we're going to be looking at just those zip codes, right? It is also going to tell me what county my zip codes fall within. And here it looks like I've done a good job of selecting just counties within Newcastle County or zip codes within Newcastle County, Delaware. So these are the 6 zip codes that I selected. And so as I scroll down, you'll see now that we have an average or an aggregate for our report location. Then we have data for each of our Delaware zip codes. We can see there. We've got the county level and the state and national averages as well. So all of that's available to you. As I scroll down, you'll see that again, as we're able to provide that breakout information, this is median family income by family composition. It's great detail to have, right? It tells you a lot. So first off, what this tells me is that I'd like to live in Delaware because those wages are great, right? Those income by family composition, those all look like great numbers, right? But what we can start to see, right, though, is that we have some disparity, right, between single males without children and single females without children, right? That 82 versus 65 within 19702, right? So that's a pretty big disparity. We can see that plays out in many of these other zip codes as well. So that's maybe something that we want to look into, right? How do we support single females without children a little more? Or I think we've got some no data in some cases, but we can see that sort of same pattern between single males with children and single females with children as well. So that's some good information that you can use with the breakouts that we have there as well. So that's a good example. And then here we do have a state that participates in the marketplace. So maybe we can look at, is there a relationship, right, between income and insurance status? And so here we can see that in many of these places, we do have we've got a significant amount of people that are enrolled through the marketplace, but not a huge amount, right? We can see those totals and those percentages, and then we can see how that plays out here on the map as well. Finally, let me scroll down to our SNAP benefits. I know I added that one as well. This is another good example where we're able to see then the aggregate of those six zip codes that I've selected. We also see our county, state, and national averages as well. But this gives us an idea here in terms of households receiving SNAP benefits, right? Some of those areas that we were looking at earlier were very high, right? In the Memphis area, over 30%. Here, we're not seeing that same utilization, right? Because we probably have such higher incomes, family household incomes. But we do have a couple of areas that look like there could be some work to be done, right? So we've got a couple of zip codes here that are over that 10% mark, where we've got some zip codes here that are, under 5% or around 5%. So these would be the places that, again, if we're looking to do any sort of distribution, program, delivery type of thing, those would be the areas where you'd probably want to spend the most of your time, efforts, and money there. Again, as we are able to break out things like age, race, gender, and ethnicity, we'll do that here as well. So we can see within the SNAP benefits by race, ethnicity, that we have higher utilization among folks that are American Indian or Alaskan Native, some other race, that sort of thing within some of these zip codes. And then we see that we've got some lower rates among white populations in certain areas, right? And within some of our other populations as well. So just a kind of nice little overview that can help you dive a little bit deeper into some of the, specific race or age or gender groups that you might be interested in. So that is the second way that you can go about using the community needs assessment to access that zip code level data. The last way that you can do this is using our pick from map option. So here you'll notice that let me delete all of my Delaware zip codes so we can start from scratch. So we use the zip code option, we use the county option. Now we're going to use this pick from map option, right? So here we'll go back to Memphis, and we'll zoom into this area, and I'm going to select my geography type as zip code. Now, as soon as I pick a zip code, so first and foremost, if you're using this tool, you'll see this little round button with arrows that allows you to kind of zoom in and zoom out, just like we did within the map room. And now I need to actually pick zip codes that I want to include in my report, so I can select a series of zip codes. So just as I had mentioned earlier with our zip code selector tool, we get this little message that tells us selecting less than 5 zip codes or census tract will limit the number of indicators. And then it gives you a link to our small area estimation methodology. So if you are ever curious about how we do some of the analysis for those small areas and calculate zip code level data or census tract level data, this is a nice little PDF that kind of explains it and how we do those population weighted estimates here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to follow the rules, and I'm going to pick 5 or more zip codes here. And then I can do the same process, right? I'm going to select some data indicators. So I'm going to turn all the ones off that I currently have and go down to education. So maybe I want to look at no high school diploma and high school graduation rate. And then we also have an indicator that's employment status by educational attainment, which I think is always fascinating. So those will be the three indicators that I'm going to select for my report to view at that zip code level here. And so again, you'll notice that I don't get my zip codes right away because this is sort of like using that county option, and I'm going to have to turn them on in order to do that. So now that I've turned them on, I get a slightly different table, right, that includes the aggregate report location. So these 5 zip codes that I've selected in Tennessee. Then I get the rates for each of those zip codes and my county, state, and national averages. These data are also broken out here. You can see by race and ethnicity, as well as gender. So if you are interested in graduation rates, for example, or no high school diploma, folks that don't graduate, looking again for potential disparities or groups that might need some more programming or attention in order to be successful, using this kind of breakout and being able to locate what zip code they're in and potentially what school district they're in could be really helpful for sort of doing some of that targeting as well. So those are some of the ways in which you can use the zip code feature within the community needs assessment. Just a couple of overviews of the report or of the assessment. You can download any of these as PDF, as an Excel file. So just like within the map room where we extracted some of that zip code data into a CSV, we can also do that here in the report. It's going to give you all that same data that you kind of see right in the report in a data table or in a Microsoft Word document. The Word document is often used because a lot of times people are doing a larger needs assessment, and the secondary data piece is just one part of it. So pulling this out into Word allows you to then kind of transfer it over right into a larger document with your full needs assessment. Some of the other report options that you'll notice here is that with higher level subscriptions, you also have the ability to sort your reports by indicators that are worse than state average or indicators that are better than state average. So unfortunately, it looks like I've chosen indicators here that are none of them are better than state average. So I only have one option to filter, and that's indicators worse than state average. We also have a quick facts report. So if you ever wanted to pull just a quick facts report, that's available to you as well, in addition to a source and methodology appendix. And you can save these to your dashboard or share them as dynamic links if you're interested in doing that. The last thing that I want to show you that could be helpful as you're looking for or using zip code level data on SparkMap, or really anywhere, I suppose, is we do have this community needs assessment indicator list. It's under the data tab in the main menu. And we have some filter options there as well. So this is our full data list. I think it's close to over 400 indicators now, which is exciting. But that can kind of be hard then, right, to pick out which ones are available by zip code and which ones are not. So you'll notice that we have a couple of filter options within this larger table. And so if I click on the little filter under data geography, you'll notice that I have a zip code option. And so now I can get myself a list of only those indicators that are available by zip code within the Community Needs Assessment report. Now, a lot of these are going to be demographics to start. That is our top level category, and those are more frequently available at those smaller geographies. But now, if I scroll a little bit, you can see that we do have some of these other data that are available by zip code. So if you're looking for something specific or you're hoping to build a nice little indicator package by zip code, this might be a really helpful list to start with. And just so you know, you don't have to view it on the web. We have a download option that will download this list to CSV for you. So then it might be a little bit easier to look at all of the indicators that we have available by zip code, kind of look at their topic areas and group those together. The last thing that I'll mention is that we do have a support section. And so, like I said earlier, I'm sure you guys will remember everything I said. But in case you don't, you can come here and you'll see that we have how to build a zip code level assessment under the needs assessment. And then under the map room, we have that how to download data tool, which is probably going to be the most useful for that zip code feature.
Thank you for learning more about SparkMap. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out via the contact form on sparkmap.org. Don't forget to subscribe.